Which receivers are undervalued and which receivers are overvalued? It's a big discussion right now in the fantasy community, so we decided to bring in Daddy's Home from DLF and Joe Pisapia from Fantasy Pros to discuss with us and figure out which ones we're actually going after and which ones we need to fade. Be sure to stick around for the end of the episode. We have some discussion on the 2022 draft, and of course, let us know in the comments where you feel like some of these players should be valued. When we have these wide receivers, right? Some get underdrafted, some get overdrafted, and the youth is almost like it's misperceived. So we have guys like DK Metcalf and AJ Brown who have yet to really make that big of a dent in fantasy, yet they're getting drafted last year at least as top 3 wide receivers for that. So Shane, I'm going to go to you on this one. Like, is there a younger player who's just significantly overvalued right now in terms of ADP and in terms of perceived value?
You mean besides Javonta Williams? Javonta Williams.
Shane, sacrilege. Yeah. I love
Javonta. I mean, basically any running back that's drafted in the top 5, I'm like, oh, what are you doing? No. But at least Jonathan Taylor's earned it with a season that was, would have been a top 10 season in most running back seasons. Javonta Williams had an okay season, good season. I'll give him a good season. And the community pumped him up like he was the next running back one. Oh, wait, he is a running back one now. Like he was the overall running back one. I thought we were going to do that with Cam Akers. So I do want to take a second to say I'm proud of the community as a whole for not doing that with Cam Akers. It was on the precipice, right? It was. Mm-hmm. It was ready to tip. All he needed to do was like one 15-yard run in the Super Bowl. And it would have been there, and he couldn't do it.
Yep.
I just Javonta for me. I mean, Elijah Moore. I love Elijah Moore, but he's another one too. We're like, oh no. You have to extrapolate that 4-game run that he had, and that means he is a wide receiver one. And we're like, well, guys, I mean, I know it's a dirty word to say, he's mostly a slot receiver. Okay, like that's where he's going to work from. And yes, there's some fantastic slot receivers, but it's generally they're not going to be the wide receiver one unless they're getting pumped with 170 targets or so, and maybe more will be. But we've already made that leap to, well, it's a definite thing. It's going to happen. Elijah Moore is a top 12 wide receiver. And we did it with Jalen Waddle, too. And now we look even less smart or more stupid or stupider because Tyreek Hill's there. So Tyreek Hill just smacked everyone in the face. And what my problem with that is now everyone's going to go, well, if Tyreek Hill never showed up, Jalen Waddle would have been a top 5 wide receiver. He wasn't going to be a top 5 wide receiver anyway. He's probably going to be top 12, but not top 5. Sorry.
So it's funny because you guys both hit on 2 names that have stuck out to me when looking at DLF's ADP. I was looking at the March one, and Chase's segue and Shane's answer kind of nailed it for me. When I saw Elijah Moore going ahead of Chris Godwin, that's when I started getting nauseous. I was like,
that was going to be my pick.
so we're on the same page there.
Yeah. And I like Elijah Moore as a talent, but it's the Jets, and it's still Zach Wilson. There's still a lot to be determined there. And so I think it's very difficult to rank him ahead of some of the other guys. But go ahead, Daddy.
Yeah, no, it's a perfect point. And for me, it's too late. Like your acquisition window was October and November when people had soured on him. I mean, I loved him coming out of college. There is a ton of talent there, but you hit it on the head. It's the Jets. Like Shane said, it's mostly a slot receiver, and it's not on an offense. And Joe, you covered that earlier about the ecosystem that's going to grow players. Mm-hmm. This is the Jets. And what you saw with their offseason is they decided to spend on borderline tight ends instead of actually improving their team, and were very Jets-like. But yeah, to see him going over players that have been productive, it very much feels like when we put DJ Moore up, I think it was a year ago, we put him up to wide receiver 3 in the preseason, and that hasn't paid off yet. We did it with Amari Cooper. We did it with Sammy Watkins. Like, we have this idea that we can figure out the next big thing, and we skip over the current big thing for it. And I'll never figure that out. And I think that people have been winning dynasty championships by zigging when people are zagging to that kind of, hey, this guy's going to explode. Amon-Ra, another great one. But picking these players over guys that Chase, you're on mute if you're trying to talk, by the way. Picking these players that are going to blow up instead of taking the guys who already have, it's never made sense to me. So I'm pretty cool with passing on more for Godwin.
Well, one thing, it makes sense if you're not doing it at cost, right?
Mhm.
Like if you're trying to hit on the next big thing, but not paying like he already is the next big thing. Like, yeah, I did that with Juju, and I definitely did that with DJ Moore, and I'm still feeling like pains from those situations where it's like, I went all in on these guys, and I'm still waiting for that return when I probably could have went another way.
Yeah, no, it was kind of funny. I had no intention of you guys actually going to Elijah Moore with this one. My answer was going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it was funny because somebody sent me a trade in one of my leagues that I'm in, and we actually broke it down. But he wanted to trade me Elijah Moore for Antonio Gibson, and I was like that's not even relatively close. And then I went and looked at the rankings, and I was like, man, dude, people have this guy incredibly too high just based off potential. You're almost paying a ceiling, for the value instead of paying for what he might put up or what he should put up on a day-to-day basis. So let's go ahead and hop over to a little bit of a different view. And we saw guys like Amari Cooper, right, who got overdrafted and overvalued in fantasy year after year after year after year. But now he's going a little bit later. I think he's somewhere in the 30s, I believe, for overall draft position, or maybe that's wide receivers just because he is getting up there in age. I think he's 28 years old or so. Is Amari Cooper one of those guys where you can actually go and try and acquire him for a decent price if you have a win now team and he could actually return value? Start out with Joe on that one.
Right now he's wide receiver 21 on the consensus on Fantasy Pros and the half PPR. And I think in redraft you can make the argument, depending upon how much time Watson does miss this season in terms of what the suspension is. If it's 4 games or less, you could make a top 10 almost overall. Like you can make wide receiver 1 for Amari Cooper arguments all day long, and I have a hard time arguing against it. I really would. If you are a win now team, it's a good setup. But again, the only pause is the unknown of, well, what's going to happen here for these many weeks. Are we talking 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 weeks? It's going to be something most likely. So I think you have to kind of bake that in. So right now, I think 21 is fair. I think if you want to be more aggressive, you can be on Amari Cooper. It's an interesting time to buy because I think that whenever you have a player like Deshaun Watson move and all of a sudden you got those two guys attached, there's very little chance that it's not going to be productive. Like, I don't think this is going to be hugely disappointing. It's like, wow, we really whiffed on that. I can't believe Amari Cooper wasn't productive with Deshaun Watson. But on the flip side, if you're trying to get out from Amari Cooper, this is the best time because you know why? Amari Cooper might miss a third of the season with Deshaun Watson, maybe even more. It depends on what that suspension is. So you can make the argument. To me, either way, I think what it comes down to is your roster construction and what sort of team you have and what you can handle. Can you handle a 6-week gap with Amari Cooper having, who knows, Baker Mayfield, somebody else throwing the football? If so, good, then he's valuable to you in that roster. But if you're already kind of stretched thin, last thing you want to do is struggle out of the gate for the first 5-6 weeks of the season.
You're back on mute again, Chase. And sorry,
Shane.
Yes, Shane.
We're killing it.
Shane was on mute the entire show, because I tried to earlier today. He just kept muting himself.
You're killing it right now.
So you want me and Joe to just talk? You guys just be fans for the day? That's cool.
That's where we have to go. No, Mike, do you have anything else to add to that, or are you pretty much on pace with Joe? Because that's exactly how I feel. I mean, he pretty much nailed it.
Yeah, no, I think for me that when I look at the ADP and where he's falling, there's a couple other guys that fall into the category that I prefer. Mike Evans right now currently going wide receiver 21. Really you're talking about a half a year age difference, although people seem to think that Mike Evans is 20 years older than Amari Cooper. And I think what I'm seeing from Tampa Bay with Brady, not only Brady returning, but also him getting people to come sign 3-year deals tells me I don't think he's back for just this 1 year. I think you may get a couple years from Brady. Deandre Hopkins going at wide receiver 28 right now. He's proven to be a far bigger star than Amari Cooper. Mm-hmm. And then the perennially underrated and far easier to acquire Brandon Cooks, obviously just sitting there down in the wide receiver 30s. All these guys are people that I'm higher on in terms of cost of acquisition and overall play this year than Amari Cooper. I would put Cooper ahead of Cooks in value, but when I just look at the cost of acquisition combined with the talent, I think it's just far easier to get your hands on. Cooper to me is just not a player that I tend to love. Maybe it's old scars. He's disappeared at very big times for me when I have had Amari Cooper on my team. But I agree with Joe. I actually have Cooper on one squad, and I could not put him on the trade block fast enough when the Watson news values hits, because I don't think his value will get higher. I think the ADP is just lagging right now. But I think your cost of acquisition for Amari Cooper obviously has gone up, and we'll see that in the coming months data to a point where I'm probably out. I just think there's other players I can pick up for my win now squad that have far less question marks around them than Cooper.
We were the other day trying to find a comp to Amari Cooper after a show. Andrew Erickson and I were sitting around. I was like, let's find a comp guy historically to Amari Cooper. And we were knocking our heads. And eventually I think I found one. Like, who's a guy that's been around on a couple teams? They could pretty much just put in ink like 1,200 yards, somewhere around there, 8 touchdowns. But he's never going to have that season where you're just like blown away. I mean, maybe he will with Watson. Anything's possible. And I ended up landing on Keenan Mccardell. Remember Keenan Mccardell?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Remember that a guy who played on a couple different teams? Very good player, a player that we all liked in fantasy, a player that had wide receiver 1 games. You'd look up at the end of the year and you go, oh, look at him. He's 1,200 yards or 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's a good wide receiver. But for some reason, he never quite had that, there's no 1,500 yards. There's no, Julio Jones kind of season or anything like that. And I think whenever I think of Amari Cooper now, I keep reminding myself, like, he's been that guy. The only difference is, now they have Deshaun Watson, there is that, as you were saying, that potential for more. And if someone's going to overpay for that, I'm listening. I'm absolutely listening.
So Mike actually brought up some guys that, kind of work our way into our next segment when he brought up Brandon Cooks and DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm going to go to Shane with this one. Shane, do you have anybody in like the top 10 rounds or below the top 10 rounds or dynasty sleeper that you find would be like a significant value right now that nobody's really talking about?
Shane, you're on mute, by the way.
Thank you, Michael. See, you could have nudged me like that, Chase. I'm just saying. I don't know. I'm doing a startup right now, and I got to be honest with you. After the 7th round, I was like, oh, not these fucking guys. Like, Jesus Christ. Curtis Samuel. If Washington does nothing, I kind of like Curtis Samuel. And by I mean like is a strong word. So I'll draft him. I don't know. We got rookies. I like rookies. I always go rookies because I want upside.
Oh, Joe, do you have anybody in mind that you think is a major steal based on their value right now?
That's an interesting question. Major steal based on the value right now currently. In the wide receiver pool, I think everything is pretty appropriate from what I've seen from early ADPs. Like, nobody really jumps out to me. I think that the Hunter Renfrow devaluing, I think, is a little dangerous. Just because Devontae Adams is there, I wouldn't go burying Hunter Renfrow, especially in a Josh McDaniels offense. I've watched enough Patriots football in my life to see how they use slot receivers. I just want to kind of remind people, don't bury him. If Justin Fields can shake the dust off of working with Matt Nagy, I think Darnell Mooney is slightly undervalued. A lot of people are on the Cortland Sutton train. I'm still on the Jerry Jeudy one. So Judy's a little undervalued to me currently right now. I think Travis Etienne also is like the 26th running back right now. He's in that same range as like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I'd rather have Etienne just every day of the week and twice on Sunday. He's going the same spot as Michael Carter, and everybody loves Michael Carter. But Trevor Lawrence, much better quarterback, in my opinion, than Zach Wilson. So in terms of what the potential is for that offense with an upgraded coach, anything's an upgrade over Urban Meyer. I think guys like Etienne are interesting bullet points and guys to look at, because I do think even though they're ranked here, I'm telling you, I feel like in the drafts, when you get in those rooms, they're even more undervalued than where the ranks are, because people are a little hesitant on injury, especially with the running back, and a little hesitant off a team that's been so bad. And that negativity around a bad team sticks to players, I think, sometimes. And sometimes it's fair and other times it's not.
I'll throw out a sleeper for you guys. Somebody that, is way deeper, just because Shane knows that's what I do. Outside of Donovan Peoples-Jones, I'm not going to bring him up, Shane. Not going to do it. You don't have to leave the show this time like you did last week. I want to bring up a player that, I would take a shot with my last pick. I'd take a shot with the late 3rd round pick, and I've never been a fan of his. Like, not since he joined the league. This is the first year that
Kenny Galladay. Is it Kenny Galladay?
It's not Kenny Galladay, but it's close.
Oh, mine was going to be Kenny Galladay.
It's Corey Davis. Corey Davis.
No, you do this. You do this.
No,
You've done this before.
No, don't do that.
No, No, you did that before. No,
Don't
we
do
did
that.
this. Just go back to the show from 2020 and
Go
play it again.
Kenny
You'll
Galladay.
be wrong now.
Me
Tough
and
room,
Not
man. I
even
love
like
it.
Corey
I
Davis.
love this room. This is
We'll
dumb.
give
No,
Kenny
stop me
Galladay.
to like Corey Davis. Don't even start.
No, don't. Because it's literally, hit rewind and play the same things I said last year. And then hit rewind and hit the same things I said the year before that. And remember that
2018.
one year I was right about him? Oh, that's
Yeah,
We're talking
change his
about
name
the
to Corey
last
Coleman,
15
and you got the same guy. I mean, Corey Coleman's out there too.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Corey
no, take
Coleman's
Kenny
bad.
Galladay. We give
Kenny
you Kenny
Galladay's
Galladay.
better. Kenny Galladay's better. If you want to do Kenny Galladay, you can do that.
Yeah,
I'll allow that one.
We'll allow it.
I wasn't going to do Kenny Galladay, but Mike,
You
can
should
run
have.
that one.
No,
I'm going
I
to
know,
take
I know.
DJ, but I can't take that anymore.
No, for me, it's if we're looking at the running backs, pretty simple. It's Fournette and Connor. I say all the time, I don't care about the date on your birth certificate. I care about how many years you have in your contract. That's what the NFL cares about. And people are going wild over Josh Jacobs because he's so young, and whatever he is, 1 year left on his rookie deal, and then he'll be Fournette and Connor, only way more expensive. So we talked about we're going heavy wide receiver early. Those are the guys I'm grabbing everywhere. Devin Singletary is a guy that fell off the map, running back 34, who is productive. And then for wide receiver though, hell, Kenny Galladay has shown more than Corey Davis. So I mean, if we're gonna go deep there with someone who we're gonna retread, Kenny Galladay is good a choice as any, but the one I was actually going to bring up was DJ Chark. I think that people have just completely written him off. He's still a young guy. He's going to wide receiver 54. I mean, he's 25 years old. He's playing outside receiver for, on his own right now. Everyone's enamored with the Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Chark can still get it done. And at that cost to get a 25-year-old who has 1,000-yard season under his belt and really what was a terrible offense, there's no reason to think he can't do it again. And then the last one on the list, I'm looking for $20 million, wide receiver 58 is Jarvis Landry. He will land somewhere. He is bankable. He's a guy I'm looking at. And then Chase isn't going to be surprised with this. But if you have followed me for any amount of time and Kendrick Bourne isn't on your roster, I can't help you anymore. Just put him on your roster and go to Trophy Smack. As Chase knows, I'll tell you what 6 weeks he'll be good. I'll tell you what matchups he'll be fine, and you'll get a wide receiver 2 for free for 6 weeks out of the year. So why aren't you doing that? Those
the other guy too that I would
Good.
throw out there is KJ Osborne, because I feel like the Adam Thielen clock is about to strike midnight, and I don't want it to because I love Adam Thielen. He's a great player. It's a great story. But I feel like every year we get a little closer to it and the style of play. And if he somehow misses significant time again, when Osborne had targets, Osborne performed. And that's another offense that I think is better than people realize. And I think, refreshing the offense a little bit with the new head coach that they brought in is also a good plan of action. So that's another guy too. And I would just kind of circle because it's more about opportunity that he might have a lot more of it potentially this year. Whereas Thielen is a stock that I think it's like hovering on the brink. I remember watching the same thing happen with, other wide receivers, the Edelmans of the world, some other guys too, where you just like smaller guys taking a pounding. They're incredibly productive. And that drop off isn't incremental. It happens in a snap. And there's just a little worried that we're getting closer to that edge and to that precipice there with Thielen. And therefore Osborne becomes interesting to me.
Well, Chase, your question confused me as usual. I thought we were looking for just late round guys, but okay. No, that's fine.
I think
I'm going to we're going to have a call before the show from now on so you can explain your show sheet to me because I never know what you're talking about.
That's because you don't look at the show sheet until we start the show.
Man.
I got you there.
Whatever, facts. I like both Pittsburgh receivers, to be honest with you. Deontay Johnson, wide receiver 13 in Dynasty is that's just offensive. That's people holding their biases and refusing to let them go.
What he lets go is his balls. He can't catch them still.
What was his drop rate last year?
No, it was good last year. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And Chase Claypool's all the way down at wide receiver 40. And I know, look, he's like the discount DK Metcalf. Like he can't separate like DK and he's not quite as fast and he's not quite as jumpy. But at wide receiver 40, I'm willing to see if he can give me some wide receiver 2 weeks.
Discount DK Metcalf. You are meant to be getting a huge sale, my friend. I mean, that's like saying, well, I had a steak, but I'll go to Arby's because it's just discount high-end steak.
What's wrong with Arby's?
That's why you're drafting Claypool.
They have all the meats.
Exactly. They have the meats.
Oh my God. All right. Let's go ahead and hop on to this next game. Elijah Moore is in an interesting spot as we discussed. So let us know in the comments where you think he should be valued. And of course, check out this link to the video talking about the 2022 NFL draft class.